Good morning. Hey, I don't know about you guys, but have you guys ever been given a nickname or had something added to your name because it rhymes, or or maybe you did something dumb or stupid back in the day, and you just got tagged for it, like you just got branded, you got labeled because that's something you did, or um, and sometimes this could be a positive name, and then it works out really well for you, right? If it's a positive name that gets kind of nicknamed after you, or sometimes it goes bad because it might be a pretty bad name, right? And this happens a lot. I remember back when I was in high school and college. I used to go to a big Korean church, and back in the day, these Korean churches used to hang out a lot together. They used to do these joint things, a lot of these events. And they had praise nights, they had softball tournaments, volleyball tournaments, and at one point they even had like track meets, right? It's kind of, they used to see how fast you were. We were slow. I mean, we weren't doing very fast. I mean, we had short legs, and we weren't very fast. Anyways, but they had these joint things, and so we hung out all together, and and if you get a whole bunch of people together, obviously people are going to have the same names. So we had to kind of differentiate the names and the people, and how, because if we say one name, then, 3 or 4 people stand up and they're like, oh, what? Who are you calling? So we kind of made these nicknames, right? We kind of branded them. And, some of these names, they kind of stick still to this day. And one of the popular names that I remember is Young. And we have a Young here. And he actually was one of the people who got branded. And I'm going to let you guys know what his brand was and what his name was. And so, but first, we had this guy, and one of the Youngs, he was kind of big, and he was tall. He was about 6 feet, 6'2" maybe or so. And he was kind of a bigger, heavier guy, so we called him Big Young. Right? That was his name. He just went by Big Young all the time. It was never Young, but it was always Big Young. Right? And there was this one guy who was a little shorter, skinnier guy, so he had kind of two, and we either called him Skinny Young or Small Young, or something like that. But the Young that's here at this church, he was hairy. He had a lot of hair. I mean, he grew. I remember he had this 12 o'clock shadow, like it would just never go away. Then he had chest hair coming out, and we were just kind of like, Harry Young. That's what his name was. And at one point I just called him Harry. That was his name for a while. Hey Harry, what's up? It was never Young, but it was Harry, right? Young back there. See, I see him back there. And he knows what I'm talking about, right? Harry. Okay, so. But anyways, and then today, if you guys see Don, I don't know, I saw him at breakfast worship, and he had this goatee going, and I was like, man, maybe we should give Don a nickname. Maybe you guys should go down there and call him Harry, from now on. Let's brand him or something. I don't know, I think it's a good one. But and then back when I was about my junior year in college, and I was at this church, and I was teaching 4th grade Bible study, small, classroom and, Sunday school. And I was with Pastor Marion, and Pastor Marion was one of the pastors who started this church with Pastor Fred. And we were just sitting there, and we were getting things ready on a Sunday, and, we just had like this, she just said something to me that kind of branded me a little bit, kind of labeled me. And she said, you know what, you have a gift for teaching, for serving these kids. And just for that 30 seconds right there, this 30-second conversation, God used this real quick 30-second conversation to kind of really pierce my heart. And she kind of just dug it in there, and God kind of just ran off with it and started to use something well. Use it for a great purpose. And that's why I'm here today. And that's where I decided, and where I felt like God was calling me into ministry. And it was this 30-second conversation, but the things that she said to me branded me and changed me and turned the direction of my life and where I was going to go. Sometimes we're labeled or given a name or a nickname, and in a positive way, and And it can shift our focus, our attention. But also this could happen in a negative way too if we get a negative name. But hopefully your experiences in life have always been positive. I'm praying for that, and hopefully. So, but the interesting thing is that when you read the Bible, God uses this tactic all the time. He constantly adds to people's names, or he changes them, or he always, he kind of did it so that they would take a different direction in their life. And some of the more famous examples of this is in the Old Testament, Abraham. You guys all know of Abraham. And did you know that Abraham's name wasn't Abraham when it back in the day? It was called Abram. And then God said, I'm going to go ahead and make you the father of a great nation. So I'm going to change your name to Abraham. So he kind of modified it a little bit, added to his name, and then the outcome of his life changed. And it started him in a new direction. Now, one of the more popular names in the New Testament was Peter. You guys all know about Peter. And Peter, before his name got changed, it was Simon. So, and then Jesus said, I'm going to make you a rock. So probably I'm going to make you a cornerstone. So I imagine Jesus, gave him a nickname. Maybe, they were a little playful or something. Simon the Rock, Simon Rocky. Like, yeah, Rock. Like maybe he did this too. Like, yeah, you're the Rock. Okay. So, maybe he did something like that. But what happened was when Jesus changed Simon's name to Peter and called him Simon Peter, and what we know of him as Peter now, it changed his life. It changed the direction of where his life was going. He made him the cornerstone of the New Testament church. Now, almost at the beginning of Jesus' ministry, as he was starting it, he was speaking to a group of people, and they were just starting to embrace and kind of get a grasp of what Jesus was trying to teach them. And what Jesus was trying to teach them was something so radical from what they'd learned before. Because it wasn't about when someone does something to you, it's like an eye for an eye. It wasn't something where, you go and, get revenge, or you go and, it wasn't about having lust in your heart, or it wasn't about anything like that. But what Jesus was teaching them was, if someone comes to you hungry, then don't give him food for today, give him food for the rest of his life. He was teaching them something so radical. If someone comes to you, help them out. Forgive them. If someone does something wrong to you, forgive them. He was showing them, right before this passage that we're going to look at, he started teaching them the Beatitudes. Blessed are those who are meek. Blessed are those who, give to the poor, all this stuff. So, we're gonna look at this short verse, because what he does when he was teaching to this group was he kind of branded them as a collective group. He gave them a new name. He kind of gave them a destiny. He kind of said, this is it. This is what you have to be. And this is your new identity. This is what you are meant to do. And this kind of sets up, this one verse is going to set up the main passage that we're going to look at in Mark in a little bit. And this verse comes to us from Matthew 5:13. And Jesus says this to the group. He says, "You are the salt of the earth." And you guys have all heard that, right? You guys have heard that in some way. Salt, some kind of reference to salt. You are the salt of the earth. And then he goes on to say, and to explain how salt can have no taste or lose its taste. But if salt has lost its taste, how can its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything, but is thrown out and trampled underfoot. And that's verse 13. But then the important part I want you guys to look at is, you are the salt of the earth. Now, it's kind of hard for us to grasp the context of salt. Because for us, it's kind of a taste enhancer, right? You know, when we want something to taste good, we add a little bit of salt. And salt goes a long way, right? Salt. We just add just a little pinch of it. If it's bland, we add a little salt. Well, the context of the people where Jesus was preaching to and teaching to, salt was very precious to them. Because salt was a preserver. It wasn't just a taste enhancer, it was a preserver. It was their refrigerator, right? So the food preserver, in essence, what he was saying is, when he said, you are the salt of the earth, he was saying, you are the preservers of the entire planet. That your presence in this world is like when you put salt to meat. You see, the spoiling, the rotting, all that happens around us in culture, you're going to be able to slow that down. You are the salt. And it's not because of the things that you do, or the things that you say, or stuff like that, but it's because your presence in this world will make a difference. Your presence in this world will make a difference. You are salt of the earth. You are the salt. You see, in essence, what he's saying is, by living what Jesus has been teaching, this radical teaching, you can be the preserving factor in this culture and in that culture that he was preaching to. And he speaks to us today, that you could be that preserving factor in this culture. And you could be a reminder to this world that there is a God. That there is good. That there is right. And you are to be that in this culture. That is what Jesus is saying. You are the salt of the earth. So, moving into the passage that we're going to look at today, you see, Jesus tells us a story where his disciples, they've kind of forgot what Jesus said about being salt of the earth, being the preserver, being a presence, a difference maker. He forgot, the disciples forgot about that. And our passage comes to us from Mark 9:38 through 50. And, this is an interesting passage because I know that Pastor Paul and Pastor Fred have been preaching on this whole series in Mark in chapter 9. And this is kind of a continuation of that. And, there's some stuff that happens prior to this passage that might kind of help us get a gauge of why the disciples started acting this way. But let's read the passage first and we'll get into that. So it goes the passage comes to us from Mark chapter 9, verses 38 through 50. And this is the word of the Lord. John said to him, "Teacher, we saw someone casting out demons in your name." In your name, in Christ's name. And we tried to stop him because he was not following us. But Jesus said, "Do not stop him, for no one who does a deed of power in my name will be able soon afterward to speak evil of me. Whoever is not against us is for us. For truly I tell you, whoever gives you a cup of water to drink, because you bear the name of Christ, will by no means lose the reward." And then he says, "If any of you put a stumbling block before one of these little ones who believe in me, it would be better for you if a great millstone were hung around your neck and you were thrown into the sea." Ouch, right? And it gets worse. Here we go. "If your hand causes you to stumble, cut it off. It is better for you to enter life maimed than to have two hands and to go to hell, to the unquenchable fire. And if your foot causes you to stumble, cut it off.